In the last lesson, you learned how to set up key-based authentication for Linux and Mac OS X. In this lesson, we'll learn how to configure it for Windows. We'll also learn to set up key-based authentication manually without the aid of SSH copy ID. We'll start by adding a new user to our server and giving it sudo privileges. Remember, the command is just sudo add user and then the username. Enter your password. Enter your password for the new user. We'll enter through all this, and our user's configured. Now we have to add the user to the sudo group so it'll have sudo permissions. To add the new user, it's just sudo usermod -a capital G group name and then username. Then we could grep for that user in the group file and make sure it's correct. And we can see it's added to the sudo group. I'm going to print our IP address so we can use it later. So it's 192.168.254.105. The things we have to accomplish are the same as what we did with Linux, but the tools we use will be a little different for Windows. In a previous lesson, we downloaded a component to PuTTY called puttygen. We're going to use that now, so type puttygen. And this is how we generate our keys. It'll generate our public-private key pair when we click on Generate. So you click Generate, it'll ask you to move your mouse around to generate some randomness used by the key, used to create the key. And here is our public key, which we'll paste into our server. Now we'll go into PuTTY. And our server is 254.105. Which is the same as we have here. So we'll click Open. We have to log in using our password because we haven't saved our public key to the server yet. We're going to make a directory called .ssh. And we're going to set the permissions on that to 700. We can see it's read, write, and execute for the owner, but nothing for all others, so no one else can see what's in there. Then we're going to touch a file called authorized_keys. And we're going to change the permissions on that to 600. And we see our permissions are right. It's read, write for the owner, no permissions for everyone else. You may be tempted to create your authorized keys file using Vim or Nano and pasting your key into it. I recommend using this method that I'm going to show you instead. Copy the public key you had in puttygen. type echo, a double quote, and then paste. All you have to do is right click to paste. And redirect that output to your authorized keys file. You're already in the .ssh directory. Now we'll just pipe that out to authorized keys. Excuse me, redirect, not pipe. And we'll cat the file to make sure it's there. The reason I recommend this method instead of using a text editor is that a single typo, even one that you can't see in this file, will make it not work. So you could be pulling your hair out wondering why it's not working. Could be some invisible thing like a hard return or something in your file that you can't see. This method works well for me. You can try others if you'd like. We'll keep this session open and we'll test by opening another window. Now we have to go back into puttygen and save our public and private keys. So click on Save Public Key. You can put them in Documents. I would make another folder. I'll name mine ssh_key.pub for the public key. And then we'll set a passphrase for our private key. And we'll save it. And leave the default extension of .ppk. Now back in PuTTY, we'll go back into our saved session. Click on the plus next to SSH if you have to. Then click on Auth. Now we're going to browse to our key. And we're going to click Open. Then we'll go back up to Session. And we'll save this. Now we'll open it by double-clicking. It's asking us for the passphrase for the key, so we'll enter that. And we're in. We just authenticated using our public key. We'll make sure our sudo permissions work. And we're good. Because of all the steps involved, you may run into some trouble when you try this the first time. We're going to talk about some troubleshooting steps now. A log file you want to look at for remote login troubleshooting is the auth log. You can see it says accepted public key for Theo Win. That means it worked successfully. If something's wrong, you'll see something like access denied or permission denied or some message in here that will help you in troubleshooting. The first thing we'll check, though, is to make sure that the SSH service is running. To do that, you type service SSH status. We can see that it's running and it's loaded. If it weren't running, we would type sudo service SSH start. The next thing to check is networking. We'll do sudo netstat tanup grep ssh. We don't really need UDP in this, but I'm just in the habit of typing that. And we can see that it's listening on all IP version 4 addresses, so that's good. If it weren't listening, we'd want to troubleshoot why. We'd want to check out whether the service is starting correctly. The next thing to check is the UFW firewall. So we type sudo UFW status. We can see that port 22 is allowed from anywhere, so that's good. If it's not one of those things, we start looking at permissions on the file and the authorized keys file. So we'll look again at our home directory. We see that the permissions are set at 700, so that's good. And we see the permissions for the authorized key file are also set correctly at 600. And the content of the file looks good. If all those things looked correct, the next thing I would try to do is clear and re-enter the text into the file. There could be a typo in there that we just can't see. To clear the file, you can just type echo and open and close double quotes with nothing in between, and you send that into authorized keys. We can see that the file is empty. It has just one space in it right now. One hard return in it right now. And we'll paste our key back in again. I would not use the up arrow for this. I would do it fresh, but I know my key worked, so I'm just going to hit the up arrow. We'll cat the file again. Now it has an extra space in it. It should still work though. We're going to test that. And it worked. So it's okay to have something in your authorized keys file as long as it's not in the key itself. If you have a space or carriage return and it's not interrupting your key, it's okay. If you've tried all of the above and you're still having trouble, please post a question in the Q&A section of the course, and one of your fellow students or I will try to help you. You can also Google for help, and there's more information in the downloadable article for this lesson. Good job. See you in the next lesson.